Welcome. I'm Whitney Johnson with Communities of Opportunity, or COO, and Communities of Opportunity is a thank you, Elsa, our director, Elsa. Uh, COO is a public-private community initiative funded by King County's Best Starts for Kids levy, the Seattle Foundation, and stewarded by a group of community leaders from across King County. COO's mission is to invest in community power. And community power to COO includes things like this and spaces like this, bringing folks together to share food, share wisdom, and build relationships and connections that will sustain the work and the people and our collective momentum for justice, equity, and health and well-being for all people. Tonight, so excited. Thank you to the folks from the Burien Collaborative, Lake Presbyterian Church, Made Space for this conversation tonight. And thank you, Roxana Pardo Garcia, for producing, yes, and designing these sessions and these conversations that we've had. This is the third one in this series. And just so excited for the conversation to begin. I will pass it back to Roxana after I ground us in a labor acknowledgement and land acknowledgement. I would like to acknowledge that I live, work, play, and pray on the homeland of the first peoples of this land, the Duwamish, Muckleshoot, Puyallup, Snoqualmie, Stillaguamish, Suquamish, and Tulalip tribes. We raise our hands to honor all of the descendants of the Coast Salish people. We thank them for their hospitality as the first people of this land and for our continuing use of the natural resources of their ancestral homeland. We honor the immense, immeasurable, and often unrecognized contributions and sacrifices of the Coast Salish and Indigenous people, and we acknowledge the ongoing disparities, racism, and political invisibility experienced by Coast Salish and Indigenous peoples of this land. And this was graciously shared with us by the Seattle Urban Native Nonprofits Organization, or SUN. We also pause to recognize and acknowledge the labor upon which our country, state, and institutions are built. We remember that our country is built on the labor of enslaved people who were kidnapped and brought to the U.S. from the African continent, and recognize the continued contribution of their survivors. We also acknowledge all immigrant labor, including voluntary, involuntary, trafficked, forced, and undocumented peoples who contribute to the building of this country and continue to serve within our labor force. We acknowledge all unpaid caregiving labor. And finally, we acknowledge that our institutions often rely on hourly, contingent, and unpaid labor, and we recognize those contributions. And this is a labor acknowledgement developed by Christina Sayabara, of Bellevue College. Thank you, and I will turn it over to Roxana.
Hey everybody, so I'm Roxana Pardo Garcia. I am the principal and cultural worker at Roxay Productions, who has the honor to co-create and co-facilitate this series with COO. So this is part 3 of our Collective Prosperity series. We had one in June in Renton that was called What is Power Building, and really talking about the ways in which we learn power and how community organizations and grassroots movements are challenging that traditional narrative around power. Then we went to the the CID, Chinatown International District, to talk about reclaiming and rebuilding. So when we do look at power structures and we relearn what power is, how do we then reclaim and rebuild? And today is the last part of this series, and it's ecosystems of care and sustainability. And today's conversation really is around what happens when you arrive. What happens when you have arrived and have been and materialized the vision that you have for your community, whether that was an individual dream that then turns into a collective dream. But that is really what the conversation is about today. As part of one of the Other hats that I hold or that I wear is I'm the executive director of Alimentando al Pueblo. So as that executive director, I welcome you to our space, to this church. It's really a community hub. There's about 6 different organizations that are housed out of this campus, and Alimentando al Pueblo is one of them. And also, as Burien's favorite daughter, I welcome you to Burien. This is where I was born and raised. This is where I went to school. This is where my community and my family, the majority of them live, and so I welcome you to the beautiful Burien, and to Lake B's campus. So welcome, everybody. I'm really excited for this conversation, and so I'm going to introduce, I'm going to read some bios, and as I read your bios, just step up onto one of the chairs. This is Hugo's chair, by the way, so one of those over there. So our first panelist is Stephanie Morales, owner and founder of May Space Seattle, Seattle-born artist inspired by travel, social justice, and multiculturalism. Stephanie Morales seeks to inspire reflection and empowerment through symbolism. Portrait work is a way of storytelling and drawing attention to important stories and histories. She is also the founder of Made Space Seattle, a Black art, culture, and business hub in the heart of Seattle. So round of applause, y'all, for Stephanie. Lena Thompson, senior pastor, teaching elder, and co-leader of the Burien Collaborative. Reverend Lena Thompson moved from America Samoa in 1958 and made their home in White Center. And a piece of information that Lena's family is one of the first Samoan families in White Center. She is a proud graduate of Evergreen High School and the Washington State University, where she earned her BA in communications and completed her graduate work at Fuller Seminary with a Master's of Divinity. Prior to becoming the pastor at Lake Burien Presbyterian Church, lovingly known as Lake B, she was the national director of capacity building for World Vision's domestic programs. In that role, she led the training program for community engagement with a particular focus on the role and inclusion of young people in the process of community transformation. So y'all present to y'all, Lena. And then our last panelist, Katie Russell, who is the Burien Collaborative Program Coordinator. Katie Russell was born, oh my gosh, I'm gonna butcher this. Thank you. Daegu City, Korea. Grew up in Oregon and relocated to Seattle when she turned 18. As the oldest child and oldest of her cousins, she's always loved supporting and mentoring young people and has been a youth worker for over 20 years. And her time in White Center and Burien students will always be an exceptionally transformational and hilariously fun time in her life, spending hours driving around a big van, dropping kids off at their homes throughout the region. She now serves as the coordinator for Burien Collaborative, a partnership of local service workers and social justice workers who convene and build relationship and connection with one another to create sustainable and transformational change in Burien. She often prefers to work behind the scenes and loves to build systems and practices within organizations that break down unchecked power, listen to the voices of those most impacted, honor everyone's humanity and dignity, and foster healthy collaborations and mutuality. She regularly practices self-care by unplugging and traveling with her husband and her dog, where she is regularly reminded that the world is much bigger than it can feel. And then our moderator for tonight's conversation, he gave me his Instagram bio, so I'm going to read it just like that. Please do. And he's an announcer for some of our local soccer teams, and so I'm going to try to imitate your announcer voice. Please. You got this? Okay. Jalisco Mexican born and UKC 206 raised. Maya's dog dad. Seattle sports superfan. Local civic troublemaker. And Mike Hike consultant. Hugo Garcia. How was that? I know. Thank you. All right, y'all give a round of applause for our panelists and our moderator. Then kick off tonight's Q&A session.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Roxana. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here with so many chingonas, so many badasses. It's all about those chingona vibes, so it is definitely a special treat for me to be here and joining and sharing space. And we're going to talk about space today a lot, particularly on that question that Roxana brought up, which is sustainability. I'm going to ask you guys for a small favor here in a second, once I get through my password on this pad, is to close your eyes as I go into the why we are here, okay? So please close your eyes as I ask you this. And to you, what does sustainability and care look like when that we desire, that we strive for, becomes a reality? I'm going to repeat that with your eyes closed. Think about that. For you, what does it mean? What does sustainability and care look like when that we desire comes to fruition or is a reality? That's why we're here. So keep that vision in your eyes. We're going to come back to the end after we get to share and get to know our panelists and get some of their lived experience and wisdom into exactly that question. I think all of us have gone through a lot, especially the last 5 years, right? The pandemic, careers, families, and we got a sense of, oof, we made it through it. But what does that really look like? What does that care look like long term? So I just wanted to start with that and you got a brief introduction, but I always like to ask a little bit to get to know some of our panelists. We got their wonderful bios, not just their Instagram bullet points. So Katie, a little bit about you. I know that you've worked a long time with youth, and this is a theme here. I think you currently also doing work with Choose 180. You did work with the White Center Youth Program for the Gospel Mission for a number of years, I believe. You love, or she likes, blueberries. So what's your favorite blueberries dessert?
I love blueberries.
Oh,
Just
love it.
straight up frozen blueberries.
Just frozen?
Yeah.
Oh, I never thought about that. So just freeze them and just, okay,
Yep.
there you go. I learned something new.
That was the burning question
Yes.
we all came here for.
Exactly. Hey, you know what? Someone's going to eat that later, like, damn, just going to that panel was worth just that.
I
nugget.
hope to inspire
Yeah.
lots of frozen blueberry
I love
eating.
it. And she also has a beautiful puppy. What's the puppy's name?
My dog's name is Cozy.
Cozy.
So her full name is Cosette Joy. So Cosette is French for little thing. So she's a little thing of joy, which she definitely is. But
That's wonderful. In Spanish, that would be cosita. Very similar. Una cosita, so her, and it's spelled with a K, just because her name starts with a K.
yes.
And
My partner's name also starts with a K,
nice.
Karn.
I love that kind of connection, getting to know folks. On that note, we're going to talk to Lena, Miss Lena Thompson, pastor, leader, family member. I love to speak with Lena about family because her family is a generational legacy in this community. So if you don't know about the Thompsons, they have been in this community since, I want to say, the 70s, probably, around there, 50s, her parents. So they immigrated from Samoa and landed here and made this their home. Like a lot of us, right? A lot of us immigrants born in other places end up making this beautiful upper left corner of the country our home. And you've seen a lot of change through those times, 60s, 70s, unincorporated White Center becoming then cities growing. Seen a lot of change, but through all that, one thing that has stayed through is her commitment to family and community. Tell us a little bit about your family. And how it is that your parents instilled in you that love to invest in your roots, no matter all the changes that you go through, all the 90s challenges, and now what we're seeing now. Like, tell us about that family roots.
Yeah, so my parents moved here from Samoa and settled in White Center in 1961. They lived first in Boulevard Park and then moved to White Center in 1962, actually. So I live in the home that I grew up in. And so my sister and I share the home that we grew up in. We've been in that, I don't know how many years that is, 50-something years, which is really strange because I'm only 25. No.
No question.
There were very, very few people of color in this community at that time. My family, we were one of very few families of color growing up in my school, which is beautiful now because that's not the case. But I think back in the 60s, I think back to what was happening with the civil rights movement and black folks. Because we were white, people assumed that we were black. And so experienced a lot of that kind of, experienced colorism, yeah. And, white teachers, white neighbors, the whole thing. And that was pretty much the way it was all through high school. So I have a memory about what White Center and Burien looked like back then. And so to see what it looks like now is so, I wish that I had that growing up. I wish I was not the only student of color in all of my classes growing up, because it does a thing to you when you're a kid of color in a white classroom growing up. I knew what was going on, but I didn't have words. And my parents kind of kept their heads down. They really wanted us to succeed. My mom and dad were very big on education. That was why they came here. And so, some of the things that have shaped and formed me around family are this commitment to education, a commitment to justice, and a commitment to community, actually. While White Center was a very working class community, it was a tight knit of kids that I would say that didn't have a whole lot when they were growing up. So community was always big in our family.
Thank you so much, Lena. And I want to speak on that because this is about sustainability. Her family, through generations, has been able to stay in this community, invest in this community, help this community grow. When I was a kid at the same high school that she went to, I would hear about her brother who played football. I didn't know about the sisters that made it so that the brother could succeed and play football. But I've gotten to know the sisters, and everywhere I went, community events when I was 18, 19, I was playing AAU basketball, Boys and Girls Club basketball. I'd see one of them out and about, and they're always present, and they stayed present. And I think that goes a lot towards that sustainability for her to be at the same home her parents lived at and still there and still do this work. So thank you for that. And also wanted to introduce or reintroduce Stephanie Morales. Yes, got a chance to chat with her. Amazing artist, entrepreneur, mother, and just somebody that's done that, doubled down and invested in community. If you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about, Made Space, Seattle, how it came to fruition. And then the follow-up question to that is, what was your favorite food on your recent trip to Costa Rica? I asked you as a whole, but now I want to know about Costa Rica because you mentioned in the bio, that long bio, not my short bio, that she likes to travel. I love that. Tell us about that travel, but also kind of a little bit about that too. You're known for Made Space.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And your art.
Yes. So Made Space is something that kind of started with me feeling like I didn't have a space to show my artwork. And then once I was able to, I'm very much like a F it, I'll do it myself type person. So if you don't let me in the door, I'm going to, make my own space. And so I did that. And then in doing that, I was like, oh, if I can do this for myself, like I can share this space with other artists. And so we started doing collaborative stuff and then started venturing outside of art into music and fashion and all that kind of stuff. And one of the biggest challenges that I would run into every time really was just like not having the space to do it, or the expense of the space being so much that it just kind of negated any profit for sure. And, all the effort the time and effort that I had put into it. So I opened up Made Space in 2021, as the Link Project, which was originally like a collaborative storefront. Found that model was a little difficult, having inventory. So, but what made it difficult is that I was having to move the stuff around so much because people wanted space. Right. So I just kind of leaned into that, rebranded as Made Space Seattle, and just leaned into what people were clearly saying that they wanted through their connection with Made Space. So.
Yeah. Space over stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, it's been really good, and I feel like it becomes an incubator. I feel like my role is just make the space and invite people in it. And when you put the right people in the right room, then like stuff just happens really organically. So I just like, that's my role.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We definitely heard about sustainability, right? Her journey through the link and then realizing, do I want this to be sustainable? Well, this is what her community is telling me, and leaning into it. I would say it's hard, especially in our community, society, to move away from stuff and things and selling and capitalism and double down into space. But I think that shows the strength, the wisdom of a Chingona to double down and look to invest into the space, because in the long term, it's not only is it more sustainable, but I would say it's more profitable, and not just for you, but for the community, right? And it produces more. So thank you for that. Just a quick intro. Get to know our folks a little bit more. And definitely circle back with everyone. But Katie, coming back to you, now into the pan y vino, or bread and butter of this conversation. First question is, and you kind of already told us a little bit because I brought it up, but tell us about yourself, the role of your organization or organizations, and what has you on this journey, right? On this current journey of the Burien Collaborative, like the who, the what, the where, the when, and the why.
Well, as you know, my name is Katie. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the program coordinator for the Burien Collaborative, and so we are a collective of nonprofits and social service workers, social justice workers that gather together and build relationship with one another. There's 5 organizations that are really sit at the leadership table: Alimentando al Pueblo, Lake Burien Presbyterian Church, the Yes Foundation, Southwest Youth and Family Services, and Blackberry. And then there's at least 40 other organizations that are a part of our meetings or gatherings or that we're in relationship with, that we gather every month. And we do resource sharing meetings. We talk about what's happening in the community. We tackle issues together. And hey, this is happening a lot to our organization. Is this happening for you guys over here? How can we do that? Work collectively and collaboratively. And then we also do capacity building workshops, because we believe that we're better together, that we're stronger when we learn together, when we build together, and that if we're in true relationship with one another, we're not fighting each other, fighting for resources, that we're actually sharing those resources, and we can do more together collectively than we can as individuals or in silos. And so it's really about building that community and that collaborative together, so that all of Burien can be liberated and all of Burien can be successful and prosper and all of those really great things.
That's amazing. Thank you. I remember hearing rumors a few years ago about a collaborative getting together. And I was like, man, that would be amazing. But just thinking, like, that's a lot of work. Like, that's a lot of work. And it's a lot of work behind the scenes, right? It's a lot of work organizing meetings, schedules, all that. And it seems like I've seen you here at the church and in this community. A lot of times you're behind the scenes doing that work. But it's just super critical to it, and it's becoming sustainable. That's why we're here, right? You mentioned a lot of these orgs, and as someone who's a civic troublemaker involved a lot here locally, I hear about them all the time. On that note, tell us the same, Lena. The same question goes to you. I think you have it there.
Yep.
Yep.
So I'm the pastor at this church, and I'll start there. This congregation, this church, actually believes that it's part of our role and mission to engage with our community, and not to be siloed away, where we're this little protected little club. But the DNA or the culture of the congregation is such that we exist with our community. And so that commitment drives us to be outside of just our own little group. It's why we share the campus with 6 other organizations. It's why Roxana, it does my heart really good to hear Roxana welcoming you to her space, because we are trying to foster that kind of collaboration. This congregation and the work that I do is fostering that kind of collaboration. We're part of the project that Katie is is leading and coordinating for us. We sit at the leadership table to help bring to fruition this vision of a community that is healthy and thriving and joyful, and that is where the residents and the people of the community actually gain and have power to make their own visions for their families and their community come to be. I think that the other why, I guess, is Katie mentioned, oftentimes organizations, because of the way that we're set up, exist to be the best. And so we can't, it takes so many people together, working together to make it well. Not one organization has all the answers or all the resources or all the leadership or all the whatever. It actually takes a vision of how those things come together. And so I think what we're trying to do with the collaborative, our role is to actually sit and ask the question, how do we do that? How do we contribute to that kind of healthy vision? And so that's what I get up every day thinking about as a leader, as a minister, as part of many ways of partnering in community. That's kind of personally what motivates me and gets me up out of bed and excited to actually do the work.
Thank you, Lena. And you may have already started on this answer as well, Stephanie, but please elaborate a little bit more on those what, why, where, when.
Yeah. So Made Space itself now is really moved beyond just being like a physical space. It's sort of almost like a principle, sort of, or where, it's a space that we make. Our tagline is, we make time, space, art, and connections. So the big part of the work is intentionality. We don't always know how we're gonna get these missions accomplished, but I think that if you're always doing it with intentionality, you're doing it with the best of what you have while you have it, when you have it, to the best of your knowledge. Like, that's kind of how we operate. And so my role in the organization is the founder, and I'm also an artist, so I'm like feeling my way around what this space even means and what this work even means. But it's definitely not relegated to just a physical building. It's places like this. We're making space right now, and all kinds of wonderful things are happening because of it. My why for this is, in a lot of times, because I need it. I need it. So if I need it, I feel like there has to be other people that need it, and that just keeps getting confirmed and reaffirmed to me every time that I host an event that I would want to go to, or bring in somebody that I want to learn from, or bring in a community that I want to be a part of. As soon as I do that and the response is there, I know it's needed.
I wanted to just ask on that just because that really resonated with me, and I'm sure it does with others. Because I needed it, right? I think we chatted a bit beforehand and start talking about life, and I think recently you held a series there about adulting 101. Adulting, right? Like how to take care of family, how to plan for your future. Can you tell us a little bit more? And this is, right, this is not something that maybe originally thought this is my space for my art, but it's what you need, and it's also what a lot of community members need. So can you elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah, it's funny because people were like, well, this isn't about art. I had friends who was like, oh, you just do everything over there? I'm like, yeah. But I mean, for me, it initiated because I was like, wow, I am 40 years old. I feel like I'm financially illiterate. I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to plan for my future, especially as an artist. It's like, I don't have a traditional job. I don't have traditional income. So as an entrepreneur, as an artist, it's like, it was a very scary thing. And for me, I face fear with knowledge. Like, I'm going to seek knowledge because most of what I fear comes from not knowing. Once you know, then you can make decisions and, again, be intentional with it. So that's where the adulting series came out. It was very well received, and it also just opened the door for me to realize, like, it doesn't necessarily just have to be about art or creativity. Like, it's whatever we need it to be. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you. And we're going to keep it here. We're going to keep it with you, Stephanie. What was the vision that brought you to this moment in time? it's a three-part question, right? You have in front of you, but for everybody that's here, how has that vision transformed over time? May have mentioned a little bit through Link, and how has this vision molded or brought to life?
Oh, man. Well, if I go way back, the vision was just like wanting to create and wanting to be seen and wanting to feel like I have that space for myself. And then that immediately turned into that transformed into like wanting to do that for other people. And then over time, it's really, as I've learned more and more about why it was so difficult to have spaces where I felt seen or accepted or where I could be fully creatively myself, I realized there was a lot of like systems in place. I realized there was a lot of very well-designed things to keep me from having the freedom of being my full creative self, being received and having that space. And so now, through, again, seeking knowledge. When I find a problem, I'm like, okay, then I'm like a dog with a bone. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna learn more about this. So now in learning about, real estate development, land ownership, returning land, like all those kind of things, or even just different systems, or about what is traditional healing, what is not considered traditional healing, things like that. I think as I've learned those, then it's just sort of, now it's like me trying to figure out ways to address those things. And so that now it's become a more defined mission.
And something that I keep hearing in the theme is, you get after it, you want to learn, you want to empower yourself. But something that you're really quickly to share, to also follow that up with is, you also want to share that with others. You're right, there's no gatekeeping. It's about community and sharing that knowledge. So thank you for that. There's a lot of folks that learn and don't always share. Yeah. So, and the way you speak so honestly about it just shows that it's a part of the ethos of why you created
Definitely
the space.
Yeah.
Same to you, Lena. Speaking about space, White Center Roots, been at Lake B. Sorry, that's what I call the church here, Lake B. For the space here. What was the vision? I heard 3 years ago the rumors about a collaborative. There's been a lot. I've known you for a long time, but what is that vision that brought you to this moment? How that has transformed, and how has this vision brought life? How did he bring it to life? Like this, like what we're living, like this moment. How?
So I might be naive, but I actually believe that everybody deserves to have a very full and abundant life. Every community, every person. And so my life in this work has been motivated by that vision. Like, I believe that, I think part of it is informed by my faith, that I think God wants everybody to have a full, abundant, safe life. And so that I live with that every day. And so my work kind of moves me always in that direction. Part of that vision is what I said earlier, is no one person, no one church, no one organization can do it all. And yet we live in a way that makes us have to pretend like we can do it all. And so this vision in particular, there was many of us that were sitting at this table that Hugo is referring to for a couple of years, and we tried, and finally, in that final year, before the COO thing came up, we're like, we're just gonna do it. We're gonna commit to meeting once a month, and we're just gonna do it. And there was just a few folks at the table, and I think that when you do those things that you're compelled to do, the resources follow. And so that was my own personal vision. That is a vision that is shared by everybody at our table, from whatever perspective you come from. It is a shared vision for a whole community, the wholeness and the health of a community where everybody's included and everybody has a place, and we center those that are not centered in other places. Right, their voices aren't there, their perspectives aren't there, and so that's the work. That's the vision that brought me. How has it transformed over time? It has changed the way that this church functions because things have to change. We have to reconsider lots of things. When we have this many things going on in one space, a lot of things have to change. And so I wasn't expecting that when we first stepped out into this vision, but because of what's happening, the draw on leadership of how do I work with my board, all those things that come into play. So it's transformed over time. I think thinking of this space as a hub, I don't have a problem with it. But some folks in church are like, no, this is church. But so it's kind of shifting the way that people have come to understand their faith. And, some people left, and that's quite all right, because it's bigger than just this little faith community. Our congregation is about 250 people, but our congregation is this community in many ways. So,
Thank you, Lena. Same to you, Katie, but at the same time, you are now, I'm going to go into the next question as well. I definitely want you to talk to me about the vision, how you got to this point. But this next question is really important, especially for you, because the collaborative group became an institution, a thing, an actual group. And it has to be invested in, it has to be cared for, it has to be grown. And that's a little bit of what brought you here, but elaborate on that, how the vision became and then how you became the coordinator.
Absolutely. Well, I have been a part of the Burien Collaborative for a little bit less than a year now, but I inherited such great leadership and vision already, and the work of the collaborative has been happening long before it was even called the Burien Collaborative. There have been folks, and there have been community, and there have been leaders that have been meeting in Burien for a really long time doing this work, and so it's a thing now, but it's not my thing that I brought. It's a thing that's been happening and that has been laid foundationally by so many people, even here and then in the community. And so personally, what brought me here is I've worked for a lot of nonprofits. I think at my last role I was doing HR, and it was very kind of inward facing. And as I was in the institution, in the organization, working for the organization, it was just very insular. And so my interactions with community and with others were mostly with people applying for jobs, right, and then me having to turn 95% of them away because we only hire, for the roles that we need to fill. And it was just really hard, and it was getting isolating. And I think for me, the vision of just community, and community being a place where healing happens, where just all the good things in life happen because of relationship and because of relationship with one another. I think about my own traumas and my own crises. They always happened when I was isolated, or I went through something and I would be isolated or would isolate myself. And so when I started feeling isolated, I know this is not good and I need to get back out in community. And as fate would have it, Lena had sent over a job description and hey, do you know anyone looking for a job? And I literally was like, me. I am looking for this job, and definitely kept that opportunity and did not pass it to anyone else. But I'm like, please hire me. And so moved over to here, and now really feel like I have the best job where I get to be in community. I get to actually talk to folks who are doing the work and to see what's out there. And obviously there's so much more happening in Burien that I don't know all of those things, but I love having this community in this place where we come together and we get to talk about it. We get to hear from folks, and then being able to be well-resourced to support folks. And
I just want to ask that journey. You shared about the journey, and I just want to make sure I ask before anything. What was the transition like, right? Because that's a sort of, you had this opportunity, this goal, you arrived, but what was that like? Because part of being able to sustain the work is understanding your journey. So what was that journey like?
Yeah, well, it's hard for me to say that I've arrived, and I think that's part of my own trauma, right? Of like, we have to act like we're not there, and like, oh, stay humble and all that. But for me, it's that switch from being like in survival mode to being to like, hey, we're able to sit and we're able to plan and we're able to be
Yes.
strategic about things, and you just kind of feel like that weight of like, we are not going from crisis to crisis, we are not going from fire to fire, but we actually have time to dream and to vision and to like plan and to make sure we have our ducks in the row and make sure we have funding and all of those things. Like that transition is huge, and it just feels like we get to dream and have big audacious goals versus really just facing these little crises that are happening. And for me, that's always the biggest indicator, was that transition.
Thank you. That's exactly, it's those in-between journeys and transitions that I think we're trying to really learn from, because some of those transitions are hard, some of them are easy, but the sustainability of it is being able to speak on it and how you, so thank you for sharing that. Lena, back to you. You spoke a little bit about the church, the transition, the church and the space here has come through, and everything that means. What are some of the challenges about sustainability that often don't get discussed, right? How would you recommend people prepare for these challenges? And what does this look like rooted in a culture of care? Because you've been through change and change and change, and yet 70s, 80s, 90s, White Center.
Okay. We get it.
But at the same time, that 25, that's amazing. But no, tell us. Yeah. No, but it's important because she's like my role model, right? Like I've seen what you do, what your family has done. I see what my brother is doing, what my other brother is doing, like, and I kind of see how we got through it. But you're an OG, you're a legend. So what challenges that often don't get discussed? What did you go through with your family, the church's leadership?
Yeah. So this is definitely a bias. And I think Roxana will get this because you heard her describe, she roots herself and identifies, her identity is very much rooted in this place. So barring some amazing thing, Roxana is not leaving Burien. I mean, she chooses to be here, and she could leave anytime she wants. I think of like Ugo's family, the Garcias have been in White Center for a very long time. And so part of, for me, this, the challenge about the sustainability, in my opinion, in my experience, that doesn't get discussed, is we haven't yet helped people get to a place where they love where they live. You have to love where you live for it to become something great. And so if you don't, I think that's part of, I worked for many, many years with young people, and when we would take them on trips where we'd be with a lot of other young people from a lot of different places, the first thing that young people start doing is calling out their area code. It's 253, 206. But there's something about identifying your identity about where you live. And so if you don't love the place that you live and foster a love for the place you live, I think that's, to me, that's part of the sustainability plan is to foster a love for where you live, which includes a love for the people where you live. It also includes knowing what are the things in the place that you live that prevent people from having full and whole lives. If you love where you live, you're going to figure out who's working in that place, and you're going to work together for the benefit of the place where you live and the people who live there. So, I often tell people, and I can say that with the benefit of having stayed in love with the place that I live, this community, White Center and Burien together, I'm not going anywhere because I love this place. And the benefit is so amazing because you get to look back and go, man, it's better. It's actually better. And also, when money comes and goes, you don't go. You stay. You stay and you figure out a way to make it work. Sometimes it's a full seat with lots of money, and other times it's pretty dry. But if you love where you live, sustainability because you fostered a community with others who love the place too. You know, you laugh through those times when there's no money coming in the door. Roxana and I, I couldn't do this without Roxana. I wouldn't want to. And
Says everyone here.
you know, but I think that's for me the challenge of sustainability that doesn't get discussed. Oftentimes those conversations always move to money. When people think about sustainability, they're talking about how do we keep the funding in, and I'm advocating for something far greater, which is actually a love for where you live and for the people that you live with and for those that you work with, and you foster that literally over decades.
And Lena, let me ask you on that particular statement right there that you just shared. What does that look like when it's rooted in a culture of care?
Right. So what you're building is that culture with one another. I look at Olga. I look at the other folks who we are like together. Norma, you know, I've known these two now. I've known Norma for a while. Olga, have gotten to know her a little bit more through the collaborative. You know, we're rolling together. And so the
journey.
what is it? Yeah, this, what is it said? Rooted in a culture of care. I care deeply about them and their work. And so that they know that they've got others that are, it's not just them at their organization. They've got a whole community that, can we give money? Maybe or maybe not, but can we care for them? Yes, 100.
Let's go. Thank you, Lena. That's beautiful. And Stephanie, please share anything on those particular, discussions that we just had. But also, I really wanted to ask you about what are the cultural shifts that we need to occur to cultivate joy and sustainability, right? Because we repeat the work, people do the work, and it is work. But how do we cultivate joy into that sustainability? How do you do it?
I think for me, I think one of the challenges that don't get discussed is, when it's kind of, we have like leadership, sort of a leadership where it's like everything's on one person. And so over time, as that person needs breaks or as that person phases out, how does an organization build sustainability through like teamwork and building that community and building that, culture of care and the community around that. And I think that one of the cultural shifts that is needed to have that occur is people really buying into an idea of something being much bigger than them. And I think an idea of people valuing whatever skill it is they bring to the table and whatever experience they bring to the table. Because I think sometimes people don't get involved because they think that what they have to offer isn't valuable, but it absolutely is. And so I think a shift in the understanding of what is valuable, and it's not always the role of the person who's up front on stage, sometimes it's some of the other stuff that needs help with. And I think to cultivate joy around that is celebrating people and having gratitude for, I'm very big on gratitude. So it's like finding things that I'm grateful for, finding acknowledging that the things that I do bring to the table are valuable, and then doing that for others, and just kind of that sense of gratitude, I think is what is able to cultivate joy. Yeah.
Is that something you're continuing to see like real time in some of the events for everything that you're doing?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Just even from my own internal perspective, it's like as different opportunities come up, and or as I say that I fail forward. So it's like sometimes even as something that didn't work out or a challenge is being seen as an opportunity. And so it's just kind of that like gratitude allows me to do that and allows me to find joy in challenge because it's actually an opportunity, or, just being able to have a different perspective on it, being grateful for something that seemed like a problem but actually turned out to be, a good thing. Yeah.
that resonated with me a lot. I tend to not fail forward as much as I should. So can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because I know that a lot of times we get derailed, right? We get derailed, discouraged. Can you elaborate how you do that,
Yeah.
fail forward, and how you make that into a joy in learning?
Oh, I mean, I make it sound like, oh, that's so nice. I just fail forward. Like I'm just floating right into it. That is not what happens. It's like, okay, now what do I do with all the pieces? Or what does this mean? Or what is this rejection trying to redirect me into something else? Or even if I have, failed miserably and like fallen flat on my face and embarrassed myself, like what can I learn from that? And then even sometimes in the just like laughing it off, sometimes it's as simple as being like, wow, you messed that up, but you learned, and isn't that beautiful that you get to try again? So, I think, that's something that
I'm picking up what you're putting down because it's true, and that's why I wanted to ask you a little bit more.
And that's how it's happening in real time. Is like literally, I'm just like, okay, I'm whatever the next thing is. If I do it with grace for myself and I do it with gratitude, then I'm gonna move forward, and that's how it's kind of, made my way along.
And why we're here with you. Yeah. Let's go. Thank you, Lena. We're almost getting there. I like this. This. Moderator is actually on point. Let's go.
Good job.
Thank you. Knowing what you know now, Lena, what would you have done differently? And remember to give yourself grace, right? Because we did speak about failing forward. I appreciate that language because it's a way of you giving yourself grace, right? So, Lena, knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently?
I think that I probably would have started earlier on this whole journey, knowing what I know now. Knowing what I know now and knowing that it's working, even with the times where we kind of fall flat, I would have risked earlier some things. One of the values of our stated values of this congregation is we risk. And you almost have to say that as part of the culture of your organization or whatever, but risk always is going to mean you're going to try things and they're not going to work. And I spent a lot of my early years in leadership feeling pressure to always do it right and to make it efficient and not fail. And so I feel like I spent that was the model of leadership that I was raised in. And it took a lot to sort of dismantle what I think is white supremacist culture in leadership, and doesn't allow you as people of color, as a woman of color, to kind of risk things because you feel like, I have been told this, I don't feel the freedom to fail because I got young women that are looking at me. Well, that's not healthy. And so I think that I would have, and I give myself grace, and I think I would have learned, I would have found leadership or found places that would have fostered what it means to try, to risk, and to fail.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Katie, same to you, but also, just because the next question is really almost meant for you, almost in a sense, because it's about resources. You have a background on human resources. You know what I'm saying? So in a world in which you are well resourced to do this work, what are the 3 tangible things that will indicate that your community has been transformed?
Well, in response to the first question, part of me, like half of me, is like, I regret nothing. I wouldn't do anything different. Like, you only live once. It is what it is. And then the other half of me is like, so many things, all of the things I would have done different. So I think the first thing that I would have done different is I would have spent more time with the decision makers and the people in power. I like to kind of be behind the scenes. I definitely am like, don't speak up as much as I can or I should. And I had way too much trust in the systems and the organizations and the institutions where I'm like, oh, everything's fine. And then I would get burned. I'm like, ooh, that didn't feel good.
Yeah.
Okay. But now that I'm older and I'm like, man, everything is run by people, and power is a heck of a thing. And so I think I would have spent more time with those decision makers and understanding how things happened and why.
It's clutch.
I think for far too long, I did way too much for way little pay. And so I definitely undervalued myself and what I brought to the table. And
all
it
been
was
there.
like passionate about the cause, passionate about young people. And so I just worked a lot. And then I think the last thing that I would have done differently is I expected this like hidden payout. Like I come from the Christian tradition where there's kind of like this idea, this false idea. I don't know how to say false. I'm sitting next to the pastor. There's this idea of like storing up for treasures in heaven, like another thing happening. And so working myself really hard, knowing that like God was watching me and God was gonna like give me this payoff sometime, or staying in really toxic situations or organizations that just weren't healthy, because I thought like enduring this to making it better, that at some point people were going to understand and see. And although people may recognize and understand and see, there was no payoff. I don't know what I was thinking, but it was just those little shifts that I'm like, yeah, once it's not healthy for me, like I gotta go. And so that's definitely something I learned.
And that's part of that journey to understanding how to be sustainable. So I like that. Thank you.
Yes.
And on to the resource question.
Well, resource to do
Three
this work.
tangible.
3 tangibles. Well,
That's also coming to you, ladies. So
get ready.
Yeah, be
Don't
ready.
worry, I won't go through them all.
because when I come back to closing those eyes, it's going to be about those 3 things.
I think the first off is like when the people doing the work aren't burnt out anymore. Like that's when there's transformation. A lot with what Stephanie was saying, right? How a lot of people look to the leader and they get burnt out. So I think when the folks that are doing the work really have shared responsibility, shared collaboration, and people aren't getting burnt out and people can be healthy, that's when we know the community's been transformed. I think when folks have what they need, when needs arrive, they know where to go, they know who to talk to, they have folks that can get them connected. And then when people gather, it's just fulfilling and people have hope and people are able to share. Not when people gather and you're like going for, talking about the crisis or how do we solve this thing. But when you gather with community, it's always like life-giving and fulfilling and people are getting things out of it. Yeah.
Clutch. Thank you.
I wrote down, this is so funny. I think 3 things. 1, people will have what they need. And so, good job. We're on the same page.
Let's go.
And the other thing that this is kind of a personal thing, where children and young people are safe and they are active participants in the life of the community. And they're valued for who they are right now, not for who they are going to be when they're adults. And the last thing is that collaboration is not just, collaboration is what we do. It's part of who we are. It's not anything more than that we value collaboration because we know it's the right way to be together. So in my answering this question, in a world in which you are resourced to do this work, what are 3 things, tangible things? I would love to believe that 10 years from now, the Burien Collaborative is still here. It's still growing. It's deeper. Relationships have formed. People, Katie said that people would know who to call if they needed something, that there would be this kind of awareness that there is a whole system of people that are functioning so well together that that collaboration is just, I would love for, I'm going to just say this and then I'm going to shut up.
No, go.
This
Go. Keep
region
going.
is very hard
We're
to
in your
collaborate.
space.
It's very hard to collaborate in this region. Yeah, I mean, all over, people are very siloed. It doesn't matter what sector, whether you're, the social services sector or the religious sector, people kind of stay to themselves. And I would love for this region to be known as one that collaborates on behalf of the well-being of all people. And I feel like the Burien Collaborative is building that muscle.
Let's
Hey,
go.
I like that.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm on that cross collaboration, cross pollination tip. I love that. Okay, for me, I think 3 tangible things would be for everybody to have access to community and a sense of belonging. And I mean that not just like they can come to that, it can be something that they are immersed in their own communities, where they live, where they work, where, you know, where they function at. And then I think also access to, I'm kind of on this like, I think access to like healthy food and like if we're talking tangible things, like that's important. So yeah, healthy food, access to outdoors, to the things that the body needs. And then also access to creativity, spaces to be creative, spaces to be expressive, because I think then that's like a spiritual place. So I think, yeah, having those access to community, access to physical needs, and then access to the creative expression, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, I'm going to ask folks here in the audience if they have any questions. And while you're thinking of it, what was that fruit from Costa Rica that you liked the most?
Oh, I'll go with, there's so many fruits there, but oh my gosh. Okay, I think my favorite was probably soursop. Yeah.
Never had it.
Yeah.
Soursop.
It's an interesting
Okay.
fruit. It's very good for
Okay.
you too.
So blackberry, soursop, and Lena, what was yours? Oranges. Okay. Because we're talking about fruit, right? And how do we sustain that and have that joy?